Christoph, let me ask you, why do you think that Truman has never come close to discovering the true nature of his world until now?
We accept the reality of the world with which we're presented. It's as simple as that.
Today I want to talk about the awesome fact that our eyes are actually mini gyroscopes, or more specifically, our own built-in attitude indicators, just like on an airplane. Our eyes work in conjunction with the horizon, which is rendered by each person's eyes depending on his or her height and altitude. The horizon rendered by our eyes acts just like the horizon reference arm of a plane's attitude indicator, also known as the artificial horizon. Now this also demonstrates that our eyes are built for a flat plane only. The functionality of our eyes and the fact that they always render the horizon at our eye level is what allows us to see using perspective, to distinguish up from down, a gradient that is sloping downward or sloping upward, near from far, and truly proves that we do not live on a ball. Angular resolution describes the ability of any image-forming device, such as a telescope, microscope, camera, or the human eye, to distinguish small details of an object. It is the minimum angle needed so that an instrument can discern resolvable detail, and it represents the resolving power and precision of optical instruments, which includes the eye. This angle is created at the eye or the lens, and it is based on the diameter of an object and that object's distance from the observer or the device. This angle determines the size of the image that is projected onto the retina. So, once an angle is small enough that it reaches the angular resolution limit, no image can be resolved on the retina, and basically the object disappears. The formula to find the angular resolution of the human eye, or any image-forming device, is the constant of 1.22 times the wavelength of light divided by the diameter of the lens aperture or entrance pupil. Once you figure out the angular resolution of, say, the human eye, you can then determine how large or how far away an object must be for you to be able to resolve it. In other words, for you to be able to see it. This is the limit of eyesight, or the resolving power of a telescope, camera, or microscope. Anything beyond this limit cannot be seen. A shorter distance and larger diameter of an object equal a larger angle at your eye, thus easy to resolve. A longer distance and smaller diameter of an object equal a smaller angle, thus difficult for your eye to resolve. The size of the angle is also what gives us perspective. Objects do not physically shrink in size as they move away from us, but the angle in our eye gets smaller and smaller, which is what allows us to determine that it is moving further and further away. For objects coming toward us, the angle will get larger and the object will appear to be larger on the retina. This is an important part of perspective. This is how we distinguish objects moving away versus coming toward us. The angles also help us determine the size or distance of any given object. Visual acuity is another closely related term that means clarity of vision, or the limit of one's eyesight, and it is a measurement of the angular resolution of the eye or the device. The generally accepted value for the angular resolution limit, or visual acuity, of the human eye is about 1 arc minute, which equals 0.02 degree. This means that at a distance of 1 kilometer, the human eye can resolve an object that is about 30 to 60 centimeters in diameter. Beyond this, the angle formed in the observer's eye gets smaller than 1 arc minute, and the object will blur and then finally disappear altogether. Of boats going over the edge of a ball Earth is silly. Check out this footage from a channel called Wide Awake. This guy filmed some great sky and horizon shots showing that objects can be brought back into view, and more importantly, his shots also demonstrate diffraction and the resolution limit of these objects at those distances and at those angles. As you can see in his footage, the boats, once they are close enough to resolve, appear like little smudges, and they also appear to be floating above the horizon. The boats are not mirages floating in the air, although there is an inferior mirage that appears inverted below the actual boats in his footage. To prove this, he actually tracks them all the way in, and the closer a boat gets, the more resolved it becomes, and the more detail you can see. This is a perfect illustration of visual acuity and the angular resolution of the camera, which is obviously better than our eyes, but the principle is the same. And again, if you increase your altitude, say to the top of a hotel or in an airplane or on a mountain, you create better angles and you can of course see further, but even there you will eventually reach a resolution limit. It is unavoidable, but it is not an edge that Santa Claus is falling over. Look at the water in his shots. Some would call the resolved water line the horizon, but you can clearly see boats fully in the water beyond the resolved water line. You can even barely make out the water being sprayed up from the motor. The surface of the water extends beyond the resolved water line, but it is too far and at too sharp of an angle for the camera or your eye to completely resolve. There's also a lot of diffraction going on due to this angle and the light or atmospheric conditions. Therefore, you get a blurred section that reflects the sky and the boat as an inferior mirage. Again, this happens beyond a point where the eye or camera can no longer clearly resolve the water due to the angle and diffraction. It is where your eye or camera can no longer distinguish points of light. The image blurs and turns into a mirror under certain conditions. Look at the shimmering and changing edges of the top of the water line as the camera resolves it at its maximum distance. Beyond this distance, the water is at too small of an angle to resolve any detail. At this point, it does exactly what a road will do on a hot day. It reflects the light waves like a mirror because the eye or camera can more easily resolve these reflected light rays than they can the actual surface of the road or water. On the ground or on the water, you can see the inferior mirage or reflection of the boats and cars. Some people will claim that the boat itself is a superior mirage and that the actual boat is over the edge of a ball. This is silly for two reasons. Number one, a superior mirage is inverted, and number two, in this footage, he tracks these boats the entire way in, so you can verify with your own eyes how a boat will barely come into view as a small blur, and then as it gets closer and closer, the angles get larger and your eye can then resolve more and more detail. This is observable, repeatable, apparent, and can be verified by anyone, unlike NASA's theories, of course, that nobody can verify unless they can build a little rocket ship. Finally, I would like to discuss the issue of boats or buildings being cut off by the horizon line over water, which many people falsely attribute to the object being over the edge of a ball Earth. Again, I would start by saying that it is easy to debunk this simply by increasing your altitude. If there were a massive drop in curvature obscuring the boat or building, this would be apparent from higher up. Our eyes are not that bad. We can clearly distinguish slopes and hills in the distance, and when you increase your altitude, you can clearly see that the target object lies on the same flat plane as the original observation point. This is simply a function of perspective, angular resolution, and diffraction. When you stand on the seashore, you can see a horizon line, which is basically the limit of your ability to resolve the water, because at a certain distance, the angle becomes too small and diffraction also plays a part. Above this waterline horizon will be everything that your eye can resolve above your eye level. For example, from the beach I can see about 3 to 4 miles of the water's surface, which in my field of view extends from my feet up to my eye level, and it represents my horizon and the limit of my sight up to my eye level. Now, there are hotels located about 18 miles away in this picture, and these hotels are above my horizon line, yet appear to be cut off by the horizon. Not because they are over the edge of a ball, this is simply the point where they fit in due to perspective, where objects that are closer are in front of objects that are further away, which is also a function of diffraction and angular resolution. I cannot resolve the hotels any lower because the angle is too small. If I could resolve the hotels lower, then logically I would be able to resolve more of the surface of the water at a greater distance. But we know this is not possible due to the laws of physics. However, if I were to go up in an airplane, I would be able to see the entire distance from the beach to the hotel, and I could also see that it is flat as a pancake. The hotel is not obscured by the edge of a magic ball. It is simply perspective and angle of view. The limit of what I can see above and below my eye level converge at what we call the horizon line.
And this is yet another simple observation that anyone can do at home. You have a coin and a flat table. And I'm going to demonstrate how we can make an object disappear bottom up without the need of curvature, or without the need of a physical obstruction for that matter. Now you Globers are going to sit at home and say that table is just higher than the observer height or the camera height. Now let's get that sorted quick smart. When we zoom in, we increase the focal length and increase the angular resolution. And we can resolve that coin in its entirety. As you can see, the bottom of the coin shining and when you zoom back out, the coin is unresolvable again. Nice flat table, no physical obstruction. This is all optical. There's absolutely no obstruction here. This is due to angular resolution. The angle from the observer to the coin was far too small to resolve the coin. Now when I lay it down, we can still see the coin flat on the table. No problem. And you can still see some table underneath the coin. But when you zoom out, the angular resolution is way too small to resolve that coin. Nothing to do with physical obstruction, and the table definitely isn't curving. A 100% of the light of that coin is still reaching the observer. The only thing that is creating this optical illusion of something disappearing bottom up is the angle to which you are viewing the object. As you can see, the entire coin is resolved, and when you zoom out, decreasing the focal length, it's unresolved. Now if this was a ship out in the water, all you Globers would assert that it is Earth curve creating this bottom up disappearance. But as I've just shown, angular resolution is a thing. Now what is angular resolution? Well, it all has to do with the way that we view light, whether it be from your eyeball, a camera, or a telescope. In optics, the best focused spot of light that a perfect lens with a circular aperture can make is called the Airy disk. Now as you can see in this left hand side, there are 2 points of light and 2 Airy disks. They are both resolved. Now when they get closer together, this meets the Rayleigh criterion, or the diffraction limit. And so the Rayleigh criterion specifies the minimum separation between 2 light sources that may be resolved into each distinct object. And when the light sources get even closer on the right hand side, they become unresolvable. So relating this to my observation, when the coin is closer to the camera, it is fully resolved. As you start moving the coin away from the camera, it meets the Rayleigh criterion, or the diffraction limit, and this creates a smaller angle, making the coin disappear bottom up. And when you move the coin further away, it becomes fully unresolved. Now as I said, 100% of the light from that coin is still reaching the camera, it's just unresolved. But when you zoom back in, you increase the focal length and you increase the angle at what you are viewing that object. Now when you zoom in enough, it will meet the Rayleigh criterion, where you can see the 2 distinct objects again, the coin and the table. And when you get past that diffraction limit, you can fully resolve the object. Now this has all to do with the angle that you are viewing an object. Now that we know about angular resolution and the diffraction limit, let's add some distance. This pole is about 3 foot off the water, and I'm going to put my camera on top of it. This is a common observation by most people with a zoom camera of seeing a boat disappearing bottom up. But as you can see, it's definitely not going to be due to Earth curvature, as the horizon is still far in the distance. Now this is a good example of angular size. When you zoom out, it reduces the focal length, and the angular size gets so small that it reaches the diffraction limit. When you zoom back in, increasing the focal length, the angular size increases and you can resolve it again. But as you can also see, angular resolution of the image has also changed. And the horizon is still far in the background. Now comparing these two images, on the left, the observer height is 1 inch, and on the right, the observer height is 3 foot. And you can see clearly that the boat has started to disappear bottom up. There is no earth curve, as you can see the horizon in the background, but both boats are starting to disappear bottom up. Let's add some more distance. This is Bathurst Lighthouse from 20 kilometers away. The left image is from a 30 meter viewing height, and the right image from a 2 meter viewing height. The obstruction in the right image, the globe proponents will assert, is only from Earth curvature and nothing else. But I've shown you in this video that angular resolution can cause obstruction from bottom up without the need of any Earth curvature. Now if we continue to zoom in on that right image, we will never be able to resolve the bottom of it. And globers will say, well, that's clearly because it's a physical obstruction from a reified edge of a globe.